welcome back to Church Unplugged with Shield of Faith. We are so excited that you are joining us this evening, and we just want to say that we pray everyone is staying safe, that you're healthy, and that you all are recovering and healing well from the past week that we here in Texas experienced. We are so excited to be back with you this evening to host an open and honest conversation on marriage and relationships. And as always, with us, we have our incredible lead pastor, Mr. Frank McElhaney. And joining him tonight, we have our very own Pastor Scott and Tanya Cummings. And they are going to be speaking a little bit about their relationship, and we're really looking forward to hearing the things that they have to say. My name is Jade Ruggarello, and I will be your unseen host for this evening. As always, we encourage you to ask questions and leave any comments that you may have, and we will be doing our best to address those. With that said, let's get unplugged and dive in. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. Thank you so much.
Survived the week last
Yes,
week.
that was an interesting week.
Yeah,
Speaking
absolutely.
about relationships and marriage, and I mean, you definitely had to stick to it to survive for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I wanted to kind of start off because this is the last week of February, and as you know, we celebrate Valentine's Day in February, and so I just kind of wanted to ask you guys to just speak a little bit on your relationship, how long you've been together, kind of your story, and how you guys fell in love.
Gosh, we go back a long time, actually. We've been married 27 years, but we've known each other since we were young teenagers, actually almost probably late elementary, early middle school years. And we dated once before. Yep, we dated once before. Yeah, we broke up for a little while.
Her fault.
And then we actually, it's a total God story. We have a beautiful testimony of a relationship and how God ordains that person who you're supposed to be with, and just us meeting. And we were engaged for a year and dated a little bit before that. And then we've been married for 27 years.
That's amazing. 27 years. Wow.
27 years, 2 kids.
Yeah.
Later.
Gone through lots, for sure.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, and that actually leads into my next question is, 27 years, as much love and caring that I'm sure there's probably been some hard times, some trials, right? So I just wanted to kind of open it up to ask, what really motivated y'all during times that were not the easiest to either keep going for each other or to keep going for your relationship or for whoever it may be? What were those times like, and what really, kept you to keep going?
Well, I'll start off first and say this. One, we don't have a perfect marriage. We're still learning as we go. And to me, I think that is one of the key things about marriage, is it doesn't matter how long you're married, is that you continue to learn and grow with each other. There have been very difficult situations that we've gone through and faced, times of where you disappoint one another. And the thing is that you see, it's easy to sit there and say a certain way, but there's not really you're not going to find it in a manual book at all. But I can put it this way. To me, when I look at marriage or when I look at a relationship, especially with someone I love, it's putting that person above you at all times. And the moment that you stop putting your spouse above you or over you, then that's when issues generally start coming in. And then secondly, to me, is the communication line has to be there. And you don't go into a marriage and start communicating right away, or especially even when you dated, when you were dating, things were different. And then once you're married, it changes the whole spectrum even more so. So there's a lot of change in it, but the communication part has to be there, and that is something that you're going to have to grow, learn. You're going to upset each other. The thing is that in those is that you learn from it and you grow. I decided a long time ago, before we got married, is that this was a one trip for me. And so I was going to do, and I have the fighting spirit to, no matter what, to fight for my marriage. And I think today, especially in our society today, I don't think that's what you see a lot in marriages today. There isn't that fighting for your marriage. You know, whether there's right or wrong, or in those situations, if you truly love that individual and you truly want to be with that individual, it has to be worth fighting for. And doing, even looking at yourself. I'll let her talk in just a minute. But even in this process, there's things even about myself that I had to learn. Because I think a lot of times, especially in marriages and in relationships, that we forget that she was brought up differently with her parents than I was brought up. So we're already coming into a marriage with two different sets of values and mindsets growing up. And you have to learn and have to work together to come to a common ground on what you want in your marriage and the raising of your kids.
I think conversations like this, just talking about the importance of marriage and relationships that you have, and the honest reality of them, knowing that you, just like you're born and you grow up and you become 20. Well, you don't just become 20. And that's the same thing with the marriage, is that I had the beautiful gift of watching my parents have such a beautiful marriage, and literally until death do you part, until the moment that my mom passed away. But in having so many conversations with my mom over the years, it wasn't always perfect, or, I mean, not that it was never perfect, or talking even with my aunt or my granny and grandpa, like they had beautiful marriages that they were together their entire marriage, their entire time, majority of their lives, but it didn't start off the way that it ended. And when we're raw and honest about that, like, you know what, there are times that you are like, oh my goodness, what, Lord, what was I thinking? What were you thinking? Like, really, are you sure this is the person for me? And then in the next moment, it's so funny because the Lord just can breathe that love, that love into you, and you just can't get enough of them, and you love every single thing about them. Or the things that you started out that they were just so cute and so wonderful are the same things that you're like, oh my goodness, if he moves that rug one more time, or if he says that one more time, thinks he's so funny. You know, it's just relationships don't get to the end and get to that place that you want them to be at. We are always growing. And every season, I read a book recently that said this, and I was like, that's super powerful, that a relationship, before you're deciding to get married, you should really try to go through all seasons with them. So go through a couple of things with them to see how they really react and they respond, because when things are great, that's wonderful. You can love each other all you want, but how do y'all respond to each other when things are tough? And one of the ways that I'm talking about getting through things, of course, 100% the Lord. I mean, that has been our strength, our hope, and talking to people that you trust to give you sound advice. And so I've talked to my dad a lot to be able to understand the heart of a man and ask him. I can remember whenever Scott lost his job and was laid off unexpectedly several years ago. And he just was like, he was struggling a lot. In other words, talking to my dad about it. And, you know, he was asking me, you know, how's Scott doing? And I was talking to him because I was frustrated with Scott. Like, he's got attitude. And my dad said something so wise to me. It's changed my life. And I even speak this to my girls, you know, that he, as a husband, feels, and being a dad, like that's his responsibility, is to care for them. And when you feel like you can't do that part, he's struggling that burden. And sometimes they just need to know, like, hey, I mean, that's how he was expressing his brokenness and frustration of not being able to be what he felt his role was in our family, right, Dad? Like that's
Yeah, well, first place, a lot of times people don't understand that love isn't actually a feeling. It's a commitment.
It's a choice, yeah.
And so, Jade and I were talking earlier that men and women don't think alike and they don't respond to stress the same. So, without going through the whole story, the thing is God created us male and female, and He created us male and female so that we could get married. And the thing is that Scott said, put your spouse first, and that's great. That's a noble sentiment, but that's not actually what we do most of the time.
Yeah, we have our
so
selfish side, yeah.
so it gets that, but when you recognize someone is struggling, whether it's your wife or your husband, you need to. Sometimes you can't make it better for them.
Right.
And I think we talked about that. You can't fix this for him. It's something that he's got to fix. And that's the way a lot of times guys are. But you mentioned your grandmother and grandfather, and the thing is that the things that you go through are not supposed to make you drive you apart.
Right.
They should cause you to come together. And a lot of times today, I could mention a whole lot of instances that I've seen that if those specific things happen in a marriage, especially a younger marriage, then the marriage probably won't last.
Right.
Because people have forgotten how to tough it out. And so life has got to be, and husband and wife now, and even in my generation, a lot of times, even in my generation, it was prevalent in my generation, my father's generation. A wife could actually stay at home, and they could make the man could make enough money to pay for everything, and they could go send their children to school, and they could have food, and they could have a car and someplace to live. Well, things have changed over the years to where I don't think a lot of young people understand how much. And so then you start your life with a financial stress. You start your life with and I think you would probably agree with me. One of the greatest stresses placed on a marriage comes financial.
Right. Absolutely.
And so.
Tanya married a very wealthy man. Back on a Marine Corps salary.
Like my mom used to say, rich in love. We're rich in love.
Well, and that's true. And so, but that commitment is something that, used to, now, we're in the process of selling our church, and we've got a contract, and I don't know, how many pages would you say that contract was today? About 40?
It's a lot.
Yeah, so 40 pages contract. Well, the way they used to do things was you shake hands on it. My word is as good as my bond. And when you get married, you give your word.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think people have.
Doesn't mean as much
Well,
today.
men don't like to fail.
Right.
Women don't like to either.
Yeah.
But men don't like to fail. And you actually had some good people to talk to.
Yes, absolutely.
And you have to understand,
and to, as
not
examples.
everybody has
Right.
somebody to talk to like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't, and that's what is, but today people are not sure how they're going to get through stuff. And so sometimes it's easy to just say, hey, look, I can't do this anymore. I've actually had people say that. I can't do this anymore.
I felt like that. I think that that's one thing. And another thing that I had read too that I thought was super powerful is that a marriage is not a contract. It is a covenant. And there's a big difference.
Yes.
Contracts are voided all the time, but when you enter into a covenant, when you study
And
what
that's
a
a
covenant
that's a-
is in the
yeah.
Word of God,
Right.
like that is so incredibly powerful to think. And I am a runner. Like I am the first that would be like, okay, yeah, I'm done. And Scott's the one that's like, hey, no, nope. And I mean, in our early years in marriage and each season you go through, when you have kids, it changes your marriage a little bit. When your kids become teenagers, it changes there's so many different things if you add buying a house.
When
And
they
that's
leave the
actually-
house and come back.
Yeah.
And also too, you know, one of the things I mean, right when you say I do, the next couple of days, your life changes.
Yes,
I
it
mean, you
is.
may have been dating each other for 10 years. I've seen people that
Absolutely.
dated for 10 years
Yeah.
and then finally get married, and all of a sudden,
They're like, wait
wait a minute, what happened?
that about?
You're not the same guy that you were yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, I
I'm
am.
gonna cut in real quick. We have a couple of comments.
Okay.
Carla said, Jesus has to take the wheel for sure.
Amen.
Nothing like someone living with you and seeing all of your hot messness and still,
Yes.
still loving you. And then Tony Hernandez actually said, the love that you have as a couple does things for your kids and those that are around you.
Yes.
Which I love that, because I can personally say, just, you know, the years that I've known you guys, your love is so evident for each other.
Thank you.
And you work so well and so organically just as people. And you know, when I think of Scott, I think of Tanya. When I think of Tanya, I think of Scott. So I think that is super, super important and such a good point to make. And Tony, he said that it does things for your kids, and that's something that I actually wanted to bring up and ask, you know, how did having children impact your relationship, and how did it change it in whatever way that may have been?
You know what? It was huge. Like Scott mentioned before, you're raised in two totally different homes. And it's so important. Like if you're considering marrying someone, I just say, talk about everything. How would you want to raise your children? What do you want to take them to church? I mean, all of those things make such a difference. And finances, like Dad had mentioned, like how do you take care of your finances? Talk about the big things, because they will one day, you'll face them, and how are you going to deal with it? And so we had different raising. There were some things that were similar. It was comical. My Aunt Susan actually was someone that we would laugh about this, because I always looked at her and my Uncle Gary and just loved the way that they worked. And she even mentioned one time about one of her sons had said, well, okay, yeah, I know you and Dad, y'all talk about everything and agree on everything. And, you know, she was sharing with me, you know, that's so funny, because we really don't. We
That's
argued
right.
about, you know, about the way that something wanted to be done. Same thing. So she was just kind of speaking life into me as a wife and mom. But
we did talk about, before Ashlyn was born, we talked about how we wanted to raise.
you learn and
To
grow in
raise
that, though. Like when it comes to that, we had very different things. Like Scott would want to be upset or handle discipline one way, and I want to just talk about everything. And sometimes I promise my kids probably were like, please, Mom, can you just spank me? Because I wanted to just talk to them and let them know how much I love you, and let me pray with you. That's legit. And I didn't want to do the other. And I would give them long lectures or examples. I still do. I'm guilty of that.
Well, I love telling my Sunday school class, the adult Sunday school class, this, and I've said this quite often in there. Tanya is asked why. It was a why for everything. She wanted to know.
That's
I
true.
mean, she's even that way, even with me. Well, why do you feel that way? But why? But why? And my girls are raised that same way. Now, I was raised in a military home where we were a little more strict in where the question why never was brought up.
I wasn't supposed to. But.
Or wasn't supposed to, and you rarely did ask why in anything. You told and you just did it. So even in that same process of even with our kids, that still took me a lot to where I had to learn myself. And then each one of your kids are not the same.
Yeah.
Now, to be honest with you, before our kids were born, especially my oldest, I was really worried and did a lot of praying. God, please don't let none of these kids come out like me, like I was as a child. And thank God he answered that prayer on both of them. But there was a big worry in that on my part. A lot at the very beginning. I was like, man, I hope these don't come. I hope, oh, we're starting school. Oh God, please don't let me be in the principal's office with my kids like my mom was with me. I said, those things I believe, you face and you go through. But to me, one of my favorite lines to say to my wife to this day is, I love doing life with you. And that's what we are doing. It's, we're doing life. And my other one is, I'm looking forward to continuing to grow old with you.
Yeah.
Because those are the things in it. I mean, like I
Somebody
said,
take care of you.
like I said, our marriage isn't a perfect marriage. And yes, I know when we say we've been married for 27 years, to a lot of people, that seems like a long time. And the sad part is, to me, that's not a long time. I remember talking with Carla's grandparents, and I asked them when they were in the Sunday school class, I had asked them, how did they stay married as long as they were? And it was funny because her grandma looked, and I was like, did y'all get along all the time? And she didn't miss a beat. No. And she goes, no, we fought cat and dogs a lot. And she goes, but we worked on it and we grew from it. And that, just her saying that meant so much to me, because that's so much truth in it. Yeah. Is that there has to be that growth.
One of the biggest problems or mistakes people make, men and women, about marriage is trying to gain control.
Yeah.
And, you guys have been married a long time, so you've grown kind of past that. But initially, people tried to gain control for the good of the other. I mean, it's really a noble kind of thought, but the control part is what starts breaking a marriage down. People don't want to be controlled. They want to be, and God doesn't intend for you to control one another. He intends for you to grow together to be one.
And I want to add to that control part is, it's not my job to change my wife. It's not her job to change me. We have to learn and grow together. And I think a lot of times, especially today, is people go into that marriage and they try to not just control, but also change the other one into what they think. One of the only books that I've ever read was The 5 Love Languages. And now Tanya had been trying to get me to read it for years, and I hate reading books, period. So I refused to read it. Then I got made to read it when I was doing my credentialing. And I literally, as I read this book, and it's not a thick book, I read it, and I literally, as I got done, and you can ask her, she was sitting in the room, I walked into the room and I was done with the book, and I sat at the end of the bed and looked at her, I was like, I owe you the biggest apology. And she was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, I've been trying to get you to be what I want, and not looking at who you are and looking at your qualities and or in the book, your love language. I was trying to make her fit my mold, and it wasn't working.
Your love language. You
My
were trying
love
to love
language.
me with your love language, yeah.
And not hers, that's right,
Yeah.
and not hers. And that book really opened my eyes, especially for my marriage, to look at our relationship totally different. And that helped me quite a bit.
So one thing you need to think about too, especially if you're going to get married to someone, you talked about talking about things. And most young people that I've talked to really don't talk about the stuff they need to talk about. And because life can be scary. It can be dangerous. It can be disappointing and discouraging. But Scott said you wanted to do life with your wife. That's the way to look at it, is experience life together. And realize that no matter what you face, if you face it together and you love one another, it'll be worth it.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't try to make your marriage better than anybody else's.
Right.
You don't have to, I don't care who else, you know, I always love my wife, and I love my wife now, and I don't care who knows it. I don't care if you know it, or I don't care who knows it. Always let people know you love your wife. Never say anything about your wife
Absolutely.
to anybody else that
Yes.
you wouldn't want her to hear.
Yep.
I mean, because I've heard people say things about their wives that were just totally inappropriate.
Yep.
And you need to realize that that's the person you're doing life with.
Yep.
You're if you love them, you don't say stuff like that, even if you're mad. And one of the things that in a marriage that you need to pay real attention to is what you say to each other.
Yes.
I don't care. People can say sticks and stones can break my bones, and words can never hurt me. That's a lie of the devil. And when you are in a marriage relationship, or even in a relationship, you can speak life into your partner. You can
Absolutely.
speak joy and peace into them. You just can't get scattered out over everything. And you know, guys, to be honest with you, guys don't need a whole lot most of the time. Some are pretty needy. They need, but they're not going to tell you that, you know. But
Yeah.
I always tell the young lady, if you want to see your man really get, just tell him how strong he looks. And then, he'll be walking around the house in a t-shirt.
Yeah.
But you know, that kind of stuff helps a lot
Yeah.
to alleviate some of the stress, especially if you're going through stuff, and just basic life can be stressed.
Well, and the thing is that they need to realize that you are going to go through things. And I don't know if it's a fairy tale idea that people get in their heads when they're thinking about getting married and they're planning it, and it sounds so fairy tale like until the next day. And all of a sudden, or a week or a month, or the very first issue comes up, then the fairy tale is gone. I'm still in my honeymoon phase. I like staying in my honeymoon phase. I look at my wife today, and I tell her all the time, she is more beautiful to me today than she was yesterday and the day before. And that's the way I see it, and want her to know those things. But it's a continuing process, and you're going to face things in your marriage. It doesn't matter who you are. There's going to be some type of obstacle or some type of issue, conflict, whatever it is that's going to happen.
And celebrate each other. I think that's one of the things I appreciate about Scott so much, is that he doesn't get jealous if I succeed at something. He's actually there cheering me on. And unfortunately, not just in marriages, but in relationships, friendships, people really struggle with that. They don't want to see the other person. They want them to succeed, but then they get down. He doesn't make it about himself. He celebrates me, and the same for him. Like, I want to see him.
I want you to succeed.
And he makes sure. That's one thing too that I'm very grateful. Thank you so much for, very much so, that he's always encouraged me to go and take time for myself. I was blessed to be able to stay at home with my kids, and we made sacrifices to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But Scott definitely was an encourager to, go, take some time for yourself, babe. Go out. Like, if I wanted to go do something meet together with my friends, or go spend time with my mom, he didn't tell, oh, you just spend too much time with your mom. Like, he loved to watch that relationship that I had with my parents and encourage that. And even whenever my mom was passing away, Scott carried a lot on his shoulders during that time. And he had a complete love and a beautiful relationship with my mom as well. And so he was hurting just as much, but he was taking care of the girls, and you go be with your mom, go be with your mom. And he never got jealous of that time, never was like, you're never home. He was, what can I do? Who do I need to pick up? Where do I need to get the girls to you? And it's being their cheerleader and letting them know that you need time for self-care. Like, you know, want to go work out, go work out. I got this, I'll take care of it, you know? And that's important.
Well, just as much as she needed her time, I still needed my time in the same process. And I know we're different. She's a social person, I'm not.
I understand that.
And so knowing the fact that she needed that social, and not having to have me there all the time. There's a thing about her hanging around with her friends or her mom, her girlfriends, and spending that time. They need to be alive themselves in their own walk and be able to do things, and it's so important. In that same aspect, that made freedom for me, and gave me what I needed was just a little alone time or quiet time until our kids showed up. Then that changed. No, but just that's so important, just even in that aspect, and you learn that as you continue to grow.
So what's the secret, guys?
God.
Secret. Yes, absolutely. And I do want to say just real quick, and then I'll get back to the secret, on something that you said earlier, Dad, about the way you speak about your spouse or your around other people, and other people too, and what they say. I can say that I was blessed for a good portion of my marriage. The Lord gifted me a very amazing, beautiful best friend. That my mom was my all-time best friend. We were incredibly close. But when she passed away, the Lord had already given me Carla, and we pray for each other when it comes to our marriages, and we know that whenever we are talking to one another, that we're praying for one another and encouraging one another. Even like if we ever need to check each other, we're like, you know what? I'll be praying for y'all, even if it's about you're talking with someone about your spouse, like needing prayer. It's not about bashing or thinking. When your true friendships, even with you and Mom, y'all never bashed Scott whenever I came to y'all for advice. You always encouraged, and actually to the point that I was like, what about me? Like, I mean, are you going to be on my side about this? And they gave me life lessons opposed to try to like, oh, well, that's my daughter, and he got mad at her for nothing. Nope, that wasn't it. Dad was like, or Mom would say, no, and this is what, did you think about this for him? And many times, so just that. So that's pretty much, I would say, definitely 100% God, and that we are all human. Give grace. Give grace. Speak life, give grace.
Well, that's where I always go. I go back to putting the other above yourself. Neither do I know, and this is one of the other lines I say in my adult Sunday school. It used to make Irene mad when I would say it all the time. But I know what makes Tanya mad. She knows what makes me mad.
Yes.
And I don't say that because I purposely try to make her mad, but I do know when she's upset me, I know what buttons to push that I can get back at her. In saying that, because we know each other so very well. People ask me who my best friend is. My answer is my wife is my best friend. It's true in more than many different ways, but she is my best friend.
And Aggie.
Aggie's my second best friend. But no, she's my best friend. So I know her so well And over the years, we know each other so well. And sometimes some of the things we do it without even knowing we're doing it, because we do know each other so well. But I don't purposely, you know what I'm saying? I don't purposely try to make her mad, and I know she doesn't purposely try to make me mad or upset or get even or whatever. It's just we know each other so well that it can be. And I think one of the other things that people used to always say this to me is, why do you always have to talk to your wife before you make a decision? And let me answer this, because it's not that I had to wait for Tanya's permission. I respected my wife, that I wanted to talk to my wife before we made any decisions. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's what was for me, was it wasn't me feeling like I had to tell Tanya everything that was going on. I wanted Tanya to be a part of my life in every decision of what we were doing and what was going on. So that was why, to me, it was so important to talk to Tanya and discuss things, because especially in our marriage, this isn't just me going through this marriage, we're both going through this marriage.
And not counting that a lot of times your spouse may have information that would be valuable to you. I mean,
Yeah.
You need to realize.
Well, and a lot of that was, I didn't always know the schedules either, and especially when the girls were, a lot of that time was, hold on, I need to talk to my wife first. Well, why do you got to talk to I got to find out what the schedules are.
One of the things that I think that people have somehow get in their mind, that marriage is an issue. But being married to someone that you love is a privilege.
Absolutely.
And it is absolutely worth whatever you're willing to put into it. Because I'm going to be honest with you, you only get one life. Yeah. And so you need to live it. And if you're living it together, enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what.
What is your, like, you had 42 years. I mean, what is, when it comes to you, what is it? What is it that makes it happen?
Well, and this is a lot of I didn't really have any idea what love was. Mm-hmm. When I got married, I knew I loved your mother. I loved Janet. We got married very young. Mm-hmm. Everybody said it would never last.
Never work.
Not because of her, but
yeah.
because of me. But the one thing that she did was she loved me. Now, I'll be honest with you, she didn't like me sometimes. And if you don't think we didn't have some arguments, you'd be wrong. But she never, she always loved me. And when I figured that out, which was about maybe 10 years into marriage, that she loved me, then I was free to love her too. And I think that that's one of the things that you have to do. And by love, I mean I was able to make that commitment from the inside that said, and I know, being with her, as she was going through the last stages of her life, that was not a drudge. That was just an absolute. It was an incredible journey.
Yes.
And was it fun? Not so much.
Yeah.
It
was sometimes, but because she could be a hoot.
Yeah, I used to love when she'd Frank.
Yeah. But it's just, and other times we went through when she wanted to have children, and I think that she had a big hand in raising children.
Yes. Because
I left home when I was so young that I didn't know none of that stuff. So, but so, and so she was, she was a great person. And don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying I didn't add to the marriage. I'm just saying that when you go through things, I could tell you so many things that we went through that would shock a lot of people, what you have to deal with. And not, you know, sometimes when you're pretty young and have to deal with stuff like that, you know, it's just, but as you realize, and I think we've used a word called success. And I think that's an issue. I don't think we should try to be quote unquote successful as much as we should try to allow the love that's within us
That's awesome.
to touch the lives of the others around us.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened, is the love she had for me actually finally broke through because I didn't go, if she wanted to go visit her mother, knock yourself out, you know. And I want you to go too. All right, I'm going to go, but you take your car, I'll take mine.
And you would leave, exactly, yeah.
So,
that's
but
true.
I mean, I didn't
true.
have a problem with that at all, as long as I didn't.
You're
have
like,
to-
I'm not going to stay all night and play cards. I'm not going to.
No. But she loved that, but
Yeah.
but still, she loved me, and that broke through and let me be able to break out of the shell that I'd put myself in. Scott had the same issue. You just lock in, and you're not going to let anything hurt you anymore. And I'll be honest with you, if you're going to love, you're going to hurt.
Yes,
Yep.
yes,
Yep.
yes.
So you
that's
just welched
really good.
just welched a man up.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
So,
That
but it's a love and it's a commitment that you make, and I've been good at keeping my word. And that's what, you know, I will just, you know, it's keeping your word.
Yeah.
And not only keeping your word to each other, it's keeping your word to God.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Well, before we close, I'm just going to mention a couple of comments. Carla said, "Aw, me and Aggie, we're the besties." And then Ashlyn said, "I guess Brooke and I are chopped liver, LOL." So I was talking about Aggie. She said, "Love you guys and the amazing example that y'all are." And then in response to Ashlyn, Carla said, "Y'all are their whole world. It's one of my favorite things about your mama and daddy."
Aww.
So with that, I believe we have reached the end of our evening. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight and bringing us that awesome conversation. There was some great stuff.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And we thank all of you for joining us this evening. As always, we encourage you to stay connected. Go ahead and like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram. Those are two great platforms to just stay up to date with what's happening here at Shield of Faith. We hope that you will join us next Wednesday evening, where we will be hosting a conversation on the different personality profiles and the impact that they can have on relationships. Once again, we are praying that you all are staying safe, that you all are doing well, and that you continue to recover. And we pray that you all have a very blessed week. Good night.
Good night.
good night.
Good night.
God bless.